Hey, it's PJ, and this is episode number 50 of the PJ and Pals podcast. Today, I have an amazing guest, an old friend of mine, David Aguzzi. He's the CEO and founder of Grappling Industries, which is the biggest tournament in the world, in my opinion. It puts on more shows than the IBJJF, and he's just growing and growing and growing. He's going to be doing their first ever Grappling Industries World Championships in Texas this summer. So I asked him to come on and talk about the Grappling Industries, about the World Championship, everything that's going on in the industry. And he came on and he was amazing. He talked a lot about what it takes to go into these other countries. He talked about, wanting to go into Russia and Japan and what it would take. I remember Grappling Industries starting in a small a small gym in Montreal. And now he has shows in Sydney, Manhattan, Texas, Ohio, like all over the place. And it's just fantastic to see how this show has grown. So we get David Aguzzi on. He tells us all about it, about the future plans of Grappling Industries and everything that's going on with the World Championship. So I hope you enjoy. Thank you for checking out. Please like and subscribe if you're on YouTube or listening on Spotify, Stitcher, or Apple Podcasts. Here we go. I've been good. Just thank you for coming on my show. I don't know. I've been doing this podcast for about a year now, and I just have friends on, and I try and interview people. And right now, you've got the biggest grappling promotion in the world, and you're doing a world championship. So I was like, I got to get you on to talk about it.
That's fun.
Yeah.
No,
So
I saw that you started a podcast.
Yeah, I had the creators, the Ninja Turtles on like last month. So that was my big guest. So
Oh, no kidding.
You're the follow-up big guest. So.
I'm not that big of a guest, but I'll try.
Yeah. So how you been? How's the grappling industries going?
Everything's going well, man. Have we started?
Yeah, we're recording. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just nice and relaxed. Just yeah.
All right. Grappling Industries is going great. I would imagine this year was our first complete year in Europe. We managed to do, I think, like 6 or 7 countries in Europe the first year. Next year, we're aiming to add 10 more countries in Europe. We're trying a few endeavors if they come together, maybe in South Africa, in Japan, clearly. And I think like we're on the fence about it, but we're working on something in Russia.
Oh.
It's coming together. I mean, it's made it a lot further than I first expected it to be.
Yeah, well, I remember I went to the first ever Grappling Industries, and it was in some small karate gym of some sort.
Yeah.
And now you've got like 5 events this weekend or this week, I believe, like Melbourne, Toronto, Las Vegas. Like it just in the past 5-6 years, this thing's just exploded. Did you ever expect something like that, or was this your goal all along?
I always had the idea that if I could get more employees and ones that were like driven, like ones that would be like willing to, or were knowledgeable at least in booking venues and staffs, then the idea of like the type of tournament we could run would work anywhere.
Yeah.
So I was able to find someone in Australia who really understood what I was trying to do, and then I was able to find someone who's just on fire in the States, and then in Europe the same thing again. And I think like just as long as we can book venues and staffs, that type of format of the type of event we run is just so much better compared to like the traditional type of jiu-jitsu tournaments that those traditional organizations are running, where it's like single elimination, you lose, you're eliminated. It's not a really great day, you know? Whereas if you get to fight several people in your division, it really gives you that experience. And I think a lot of people, especially in jiu-jitsu, are hobbyists. So they're just looking for that experience of testing themselves or seeing where they stand, or, you know, hoping to do a good job so they can be belt promoted next week in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
So I never expected it to get this far, but I think that with the right employees, we were able to really launch it to the point where we are now, where we're just having events everywhere all the time.
Hmm.
This past weekend, like you said, we had 4 events. Like coming up, I mean, last weekend we had 5. Last year we were the first brand to ever have more tournaments annually than the IBJJF. I think we
Hmm.
had 30 more events than they did. That's not saying that our events were all bigger than theirs, but it's putting us on the track where we have the distribution, we have the cities, we have and we're beginning to make those territories grappling industries oriented. Like you're seeing in Canada, we're bigger than the IBJJF. In Australia, we're bigger than the IBJJF.
Hmm.
And now you're seeing it in individual American cities like New York City, where we're overcoming the IBJJF, Washington, D.C., Maryland. And as we start to move west in the United States and then eastwards in Europe, I think you're going to start to see that happen more and more. And then with the World Championship, it's finally a chance for a brand to finally try to topple that world championship that exists in jiu-jitsu by creating a different type of world championship, especially one that is inclusive to everyone.
Yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit. Cause so the thing that well, I remember that really stuck out for Grappling Industries was your round robin tournament format. And you touched on that a little bit. Now, so you're going to Texas, you're doing a free event to competitors, world championship, and it's round robin. So are you expecting to get a large number of people? How long do you think this tournament could kind of go on? The tournament itself, if you have 4 matches in a round robin, you have 200 competitors. That could be a pretty long day, right? Or
Yeah, so there's a couple of things there. Registration for that Worlds has only been open for I think like a week or so,
yeah.
and already there's 535 people registered. And they come from all over the United States. There's a bunch from Canada. You have a few Europeans, and I already confirmed with a bunch of my Australian pals that there's going to be Aussies coming as well. So it is kind of a world championship where the competitors are international, and we are expecting a large amount of people. I mean, there's
Mhm.
5 months left already. Like I said, there's 530 plus people signed up. Um, it's going to be round robin, like it always is. That's our format. That's the way we run tournaments. So how do we run such a large tournament? What happens if we get 2,500 competitors, right?
Yeah.
Which is now becoming the goal. I mean, I think now it's expected that we're going to hit that. Um, you need 2 things to be able to do, or 3 things to be able to really do that. You need a large enough room. We're going to be in a convention center in Dallas during the Europa Games Expo, which is one of the biggest expos in the United States. We got the deal with the Europa Games Expo last year, so we have the Jiu-Jitsu tournaments at Orlando, Phoenix, and Dallas. We also have the Arnold's, of course, in Ohio, which is the biggest fitness expo in the States.
Mhm.
So in Dallas, at this Europa Games Expo, we're going to be in pretty much the main convention center. So we have plenty of room to hold our event. The second thing is we're bringing in multiple productions of ours. So we're not just bringing in one truck of ours, we're going to be bringing in 2. And if necessary, we'll bring in the 3rd truck. But with 2 trucks right away, we can tell you that we're going to be planning to run 22 rings. The ordinary type of traditional jiu-jitsu tournaments, they run up to 10 rings. And
Yeah.
here we are saying we're going to run 22 rings, which is
Mhm.
just, the picture of it is going to be worth so much afterwards because it's going to look fantastic on a wall as a framed poster or something like that.
Yeah.
And then not only do we have the room to hold the event, not only do we have the production and all the laptops and everything we need to run this actual large size event, but we just need the staff. And I think that's not going to be a problem. I mean, if we have any issues with staff, we'll fly in a few, but I think we'll be more than fine to actually be able to staff the 22 rings and the referees, the table workers, all the volunteers, all the
Mhm.
paid workers. I guess the hardest part becomes how do you run a free event? No one's ever really done it, and no one's ever done an event that size for free either. So
Mhm.
I think that's what we're going to be exploring.
Now, are you gonna obviously try and get a lot of sponsorships, right? To kind of help pay for all that kind of the employees, the 22 rings and all that. Is sponsorships kind of your goal to get, or are you just looking to kind of put on this huge event and then next year put it on again but charge people, sort of thing?
So we haven't figured out next year if it's going to be free again or if it's going to be paid. We've talked about that a little bit, but I don't think it's really a concern right now because like you have to get through the first event clearly. As far as how to produce the first event, as far as expenses, I think we have a few sponsors already. The main part of like the sponsors at Grappling Industries are like annual sponsors. So we sign exclusive deals usually in like September the year prior. So it's not like we're bringing in a bunch of individual event sponsors for that. We're just simply asking our sponsors if they want to be part of it.
Hmm.
If they don't, that's perfectly fine as well. Um, Really for us it's, I guess it's like a marketing tactic to make it free in a way. It's like a branding opportunity to say, look at us, look at what we can do, look at
Hmm.
us, like look at us flex in a way.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't usually see that type of flexing in jiu-jitsu. But I think we're putting basically money aside from our bigger tournaments into
Hmm.
like a cash pool and then being able to pay it off. I think holding a free event gives you more publicity, it seems, than the actual branding your event
Hmm.
through that type of marketing, basic traditional avenues of marketing. Also, we're lucky to have it in Dallas, which is a place that, like Texas and Hall, has been one of those states I've struggled with. It's such a big jujitsu epicenter, but at the same time, they're very choosy about where they compete. So having it in Texas, especially that Dallas core,
Hmm.
benefits us because we go to Dallas several times a year. We go to San Antonio, Houston, all these places, Austin, and we really want to do well there. So I think by collecting the subscribers from the world, we're able to build those other events throughout the year. I think it's a great branding opportunity. But as far as making money on it, no. I mean, there's no goal of making money on our worlds. It's clearly we have this idea of we're going to lose money on this. We're
Yeah.
gonna, we're going to lose lots of money on it. But I mean, that's not the point. I mean, we expected to lose a bunch of money on it. Anyone would. That's why people don't have free events. I think the whole idea is that we're trying to show everyone, hey, try our tournament. You're gonna really, really like it, I'm sure. And then when next time it's time for you to choose a tournament, you'll probably choose us.
Hmm.
You're probably gonna pay it forward to us. Or at least that's what we're hoping, you know?
Yeah, well, like that is exactly how I got involved in going into grappling industries. And like, cause I did a couple grappling tournaments and, it was that one and done format. And I went and I lost my first match and I was out $120. And then, I wasn't sure, I can't remember if it was you or your partner at the time messaged me after a Fight Quest fight because I was doing amateur MMA. And you're like, hey, we'd like you to come out to this Grappling Industries tournament, and your admission will be free because you were on this fight quest. And then I won a match. It was my first ever jiu-jitsu match. Winning a jiu-jitsu match, and then next thing I know, I did like 10 straight Grappling Industries, and I couldn't stop. And like the only reason I did stop is I got my blue belt, and I was like, okay, well, I want to take a little break to get like from
Oh,
competing to kind of get my
uh,
level up a little bit. And then now it's,
disappearing blue belts, eh?
well, no, not,
No,
I
I'm
haven't.
kidding.
Yeah. I definitely disappeared from competing as a blue belt. I didn't compete once as a blue belt in jiu-jitsu competitions, but I competed in professional MMA, and I fought in California and New Brunswick and stuff like that. So I was a little busy with that. But so you saying like, hey, we give you this first one free. It's kind of like a drug dealer, like you try it out free and then you're hooked, because that
Yeah.
worked on me. I did 10 or so of your Grappling Industries in all in I think it was McGill, or when you were doing them, or some.
Brebeuf.
Yeah,
Yeah, Brebeuf is like pretty much like the most recognized private school in Montreal
that's,
for
yes.
like it's like where Justin Trudeau went to school and stuff as well.
Yes, yeah, it was
Uh,
in a school. Yeah, I remember that.
but touching on what you just said, actually, it's interesting because last year and the year before, we started creating more and more incentives. So last year, professional MMA fighters of any type of Sherdog or topology link could compete in Grappling Industries for free just by emailing us for code. Um, Brown belts and black belts can compete in Grappling Industries for free by emailing us for a code.
Hmm.
People who come and help us set up the night before can register for free as well. And then we added this another one, which is a very interesting one that actually turned out to be quite huge for us and help us a lot with coaches in different gyms that we hadn't worked with before. Was that we started giving one registration per gym for a student of theirs who never competed before. So there seems to be this idea where each gym has students where they might never compete. They never competed before. They want to try, but they don't want to pay this registration fee, then have a bad experience, be turned off from jiu-jitsu. So we started doing this deal with coaches where one student per gym can register for free if they've never competed in jiu-jitsu before. And now we're exposing people who've never competed before to jiu-jitsu tournaments.
Mm-hmm.
And all these incentives, the brown, the black belts, the MMA fighters, and this newbie deals that we have, as we call it, uh, it's getting people to support us more and more because they see that we're invested and we're intrigued to actually get these people out on the mats.
Mm-hmm.
These are all groups of people that would normally not compete.
Yeah.
You know probably as well that most MMA fighters, they start doing MMA, and then once you start getting paid for something, you don't want to do it for free anymore. So you don't want to start paying for it, I mean, anymore. And as an MMA fighter before as well, you yourself as well, you know that it's always helpful ever so often to get back on the mats, do a competition, and see where your skills are, try some new things.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been able to draw out a bunch of former UFC fighters, Bellator fighters, Invicta women, to compete in our tournaments all over the USA, especially in Australia and Europe. And then the brown belts and black belts are competing as well. When they come, they bring the rest of their students. And then, of course, coaches seem to start respecting us more because we're giving one of their new students a registration. So these incentives are really paying it forward for us as well.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that we have to charge everyone doesn't actually mean anything, where if we let you compete now, like you just said, you compete a couple times and then you're willing to pay for it in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems to be working quite well. That's how we've really built that basic foundation here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like the experience, like even like, in the round robin format, you lose, you go in, you think, obviously you think you're going to win. And then it's an eye opening experience that you have this close match. But like, even when you lose, there's the like adrenaline of, competing, and then you get another match. And then you're like, okay, well, when's the next tournament? Like every time I finish anything, a fight or a grappling match, I'm like, when's the next tournament? So I can see why, like, you giving these newbies or giving these, like, getting coaches to bring a lot of their students in, them doing it once, and then you'll see them at the next event most likely, right? Like, so because
I
it's
believe, I
addictive.
believe, I believe we'll see them at the next event. And I think even if they try to do other people's events, I really believe in our product.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe that, like, even when you go try someone else's product, you'll feel like, oh, well, I felt like Grappling Industries might have been better. I felt like I got more matches there.
Mm-hmm.
And even when you pay for Grappling Industries, I mean, even if it's $80 for two divisions, which it is at Grappling Industries, the $80 for two divisions comes up to like $40 a division if you're actually thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
IBJJF, NAGA, those types of tournaments are $100 for one division,
Yeah.
and they're single elimination tournaments. So if you do register in two divisions that have 5 competitors each, you're walking away with at least 8 matches, even if you lose 0-8.
Mm-hmm.
And I know people who have lost 0-8 and still keep coming back for more.
Yeah.
It becomes like an addiction to finally get a win,
Mm-hmm.
Whereas these other tournaments, you could spend $100, $200, compete in it, and then you're eliminated. You lose 2 fights and that's it. You're getting 4 times, 5 times the fights at Grappling Industries. And like I said before, I mean, for most people who are hobbyists, white belts, blue belts, this is a pretty big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Most people don't want to be world champions or travel the world competing or giving seminars. They have jobs. They're lawyers or doctors or teachers. They're factory workers, janitors, whatever. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, this is like something they want to do on Saturday with their spare time. So if we can just run our tournament longer during the day, which I don't understand why we wouldn't want to, because I mean, we get to only run so many tournaments, we might as well make it as long as possible, and then we can give people more matches,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of the concept of the round robin.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. So I think you cut out just a little second. You can hear me still?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Um, Yeah, I love the round robin format. You know, like I said earlier, like I did an Abu Dhabi pro trials, and I think it cost me about $150, and that's not including like travel and stuff. And I went against a kid. I got tapped out in like a minute and a half, and he ended up getting second and getting his blue belt. And I was like, I've been training for 4 months. This isn't fun for me, right? Like,
Yeah,
because they're, you know, and then I went to Grappling Industries, and you know, I lost a match, won a match, like, you know, that opportunity to kind of just like, you know, get the nerves out of the way, and then you then compete again right away is just a really cool thing. And you know, all the free things that you're doing, you know, uh, are really big for the sport. I tell a lot of people, like, so I teach now martial arts and stuff. I just taught a Thai class, and I teach MMA. I don't teach jiu-jitsu, but you know, I always tell people, like, you know, when I first started, someone trained me for free because they had someone train them for free, and then, you know, they just wanted to help build the sport. So I tell them that when I'm teaching, and you know, it's all because of you. You know, I used to drive up to your house in Montreal, and you
I
would,
remember that.
you know,
Yeah.
you do like 5-hour private lesson for me, and you know, so that helped change my game a lot. I actually have some of your notes. You wrote down like notes, and I pulled them out the other day because I'm helping this girl who's just started in jiu-jitsu. And I'm looking at all these notes, and it's stuff that's still, you know, like I find jiu-jitsu's changed a lot in the last 10 years. Like, you know, leg locks are more of a thing,
Of course,
but
yeah.
some of the stuff you showed, you know, like I still think are top notch stuff. And still, like, I showed like a truck the other day, and I think you were the first person to show me that. So I just gotta say thank you. And you know, I think that's kind of like that mentality that you had when it came to teaching me is what you have done in your Grappling Industries. And now you've got the biggest promotion in grappling in the world, easily. You know, you did more than IBJF, and IBJF doesn't have 5 tournaments this weekend, right? So
I wouldn't say we're number one yet. I would say we're still number two, but I would say we're working on it. We're gonna get there. It's
you're
just a matter of time
yeah.
before everyone admits it, and once everyone admits it, it'll be a little sweeter, I guess.
Hmm.
But to touch on what you just said, I mean, if even if you're gonna, like, I know a lot of instructors that they do a 1 hour private, and the moment the 1 hour is over, I mean, that's it. You know, they
Hmm.
want everything to be packed up and they want to go. And I don't understand that. I mean, you already have the person here. Why don't you just keep going off of that? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, how about you row for another hour afterwards or
Hmm.
stuff like this? I mean, why does it have to be just that? I mean, if you have nothing to do afterwards, I mean, and most
Yeah.
of us have nothing to do afterwards,
Yeah. Yeah.
especially if we're just doing jiu-jitsu all the time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that was the idea. It was just, let's do jiu-jitsu. Let's do it at our homes. Let's do it wherever.
Hmm.
Why does it have to be so expensive? Um, at one point, it's just not fun once it gets super expensive.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a really good outlook to have on it. So talking back, getting back to the Grappling Industries. So you were talking about, you want to do Japan and all that. Is there just one location that you want to do for 2020 that if you can do that, that's your ultimate goal for 2020? You want to say Japan or Russia, just one of them. Do you have one in mind?
I don't. I
Okay.
mean, it would be so biased of me to choose one city over another.
Yeah.
Um, I know the big cities that were being offered a lot is like Tel Aviv, Moscow, Tokyo, Johannesburg, and Sao Paulo. Those are the ones that like keep coming up in like conversations, or the person keeps dropping into my PMs and DMs and being like, "Yo, come on, let's do this." And
Yeah.
I'm one of those people that if you message enough, like eventually I'm like, okay, let's do it. Let's do it. I
Yeah.
mean, that's how Australia happened. That's how Europe happened. That's how like the entire United States happened. I'm easily persuaded into stuff if it kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, I think the problem with like outside of the bubble of where Grappling Industries is now, it starts to get more confusing. Like all those places I just listed would be incredibly fun. Moscow, Tokyo, even Beijing one day once the jiu-jitsu scene picks up, Johannesburg, Tel Aviv. The problem is like they're just outside of the basic ideas of like building a production and then traveling around the production. Once you're in Moscow, I mean, it's hard to go to other cities and do jiu-jitsu events in Russia. Um, and I don't want to, I don't, same thing with Asia. If you're in Tokyo, you can do a couple different cities in Japan, but then you have to get across the water to China. And, Japan and China are not absolute friends all the time. And then you have to go to then you have to go
Yeah.
to other countries. Jerusalem is in the Middle East, pretty much, right? Or Tel Aviv, I mean, in Israel, it's in the Middle East, and Johannesburg is all the way at the south of the African continent. So, I mean, it's like they're like one-off events, so they would be like borrowed productions and then
Yeah.
having this one event, and then it wouldn't look the Grappling Industries way. And I no offense to any of these countries, because I clearly want to do events there. I mean, they're not the greatest places to hold events, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
I mean, Johannesburg, I mean, it's tricky, man. I just came back from 3.5 weeks in Africa, and it's kind of a weird place to be holding entrepreneurial activities, especially as a foreigner. Same thing in the Middle East, same thing in Russia. It's not like I can just walk in, incorporate a business, talk to lawyers and accountants, and then buy a production. I don't know if my production will actually arrive. That's what I'm trying to get. And then once my production actually does arrive, if it does, then how do I keep it from being, again, no offense, but being stolen? I mean,
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I I know a lot of people who have started tournaments in Brazil, and within a month their stuff is,
Yeah.
or it doesn't get through customs. And I know from firsthand experience dealing with customs that it can get really expensive.
Hmm.
Um, I know because there's the trade war right now between China and the United States, as well as Canada. But a lot of metals, our metals are coming in from China. I mean, we have nice metals that are coming in from China. We pay a lot less than we would anywhere else in the world. It's not a matter now of, oh, we need to get them American made, because we're international. So I mean, we could get them European made or Australian made. At the end of the day, we've been with the same company for 9 years in China, so it's not like we're hopping business to business in China. But even then, like with the trade wars coming to the United States and Canada, I mean, there's massive tariffs.
Hmm.
So, I mean, I can't imagine shipping Chinese metals to Brazil or Moscow. Would they arrive, I mean,
Yeah.
I know other tournaments who have championship belts and samurai swords that once it got to Brazil, it got destroyed. I
Yeah.
mean, customs threw all their stuff away, like $20,000 worth of this inventory. So
Yeah.
I don't really want that to happen to me.
Yeah.
Um, so before we get there, I'd rather make sure that my customs information is fully up to date. I mean, clearly we're getting better at customs in grappling industries, but
Hmm.
every time you go to a new continent or a new country, the customs completely changes.
Yeah.
And, like, I mean, that's one of the things we're struggling with now in Europe, is just getting familiar with what the price should exactly be, or what do people expect from us,
Hmm.
is what we're delivering what they want us to deliver? Is the product up to par with other products there, or better? Right? I clearly needs to be better. That's the whole goal of Grappling Industries is we
Yeah.
need to deliver a better product than the opposition.
Hmm.
Um, so that's the struggle of answering your question of if there's a city I want to do,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have the answer, to be honest. I mean, to be honest, Zanzibar would be cool, but no one would come,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. To be honest, like before I asked that question, I didn't understand how hard it would be to like just the way you explain it all. I'm like, oh my God, that sounds exhausting. I don't know how you ever
oh,
left
oh, actually,
Quebec. Yeah.
I do have an answer for that. If I could do any city this year, it would be Montreal.
Oh yeah. Oh
I
yeah,
mean,
because grappling still like really.
yeah, so
Yeah.
grappling industry started in Montreal. It's based out of Montreal. I'm in Montreal. It's my
Yeah.
home city. I don't really want to move away from Montreal, but yet Montreal and the province of Quebec is the only place illegal in North America to host or produce a jiu-jitsu tournament. And I think I think it's just so funny when you think about it, that like one of the biggest brands in jiu-jitsu tournaments in the entire world has its main parent incorporation of all these subsidiaries in Quebec, and we're not
Yeah.
allowed to actually produce a tournament here.
Yeah,
So
I forgot about that. Like, that's unbelievable that you can't still, because I always hear about Fight Quest because they do those on the reserve and stuff.
yeah.
But just the fact that, like, even amateur MMA is illegal in Quebec right now is, aside from
Yeah.
Fight Quest, is unbelievable. Like,
I think I fought on the last Fight Quest that was actually not on the reserve. It was like in Laval,
mhm.
at the scratch. And then
was
from,
was it a
sorry.
bar?
Yeah, it was like a really big bar. It had about 1,000 people there. It was Scratch is like a billiards bar with like a concert area.
Yeah, because I think I fought in Laval at a Fight Quest in a bar. I don't know if it was the same bar, but like I had to get warmed up on the patio and stuff.
Exactly, yeah. So
Yes.
we fought at the same place, and then
Yeah.
from there they went to the reserve. I know there's so I know they're on the reserve now, and I know there's a jiu-jitsu tournament that exists in Quebec that's doing it on the reserves.
Mhm.
The thing is, I'm not a fan of doing my tournaments on the reserve or doing any type of show on the reserve. I feel like once everything becomes legal again, then it's going to be really hard to gain that trust from the
Trust.
government again.
Yeah.
I mean, also when you're holding your events on the reserve, you need a contact from the reserve. I don't have that contact.
Mhm.
I was offered one time to hold an event in Quebec in Kanawaki, which is a reserve here.
Mhm.
Um, but then I had no way of paying tax, and taxes are something that I pay. I mean, no, I mean I do. Like it, I've always said that if you're going to build a company this big, like Grappling Industries has become, you have to do everything kind of legally and right.
Yeah.
And that means having the accountants pay your taxes, having lawyers actually register you properly. And if I'm on the reserve, my problem is I can't pay those. I can't pay QST and GST in Quebec, and I can't properly insure my event. And at that point, then I just feel like it's not a completely legal event. I'm just trying to find a loophole that's not being given to me by the actual province, but by someone who lives in a certain place. So that's where I really am uncomfortable with the idea, especially for when jiu-jitsu becomes legal afterwards in Quebec. I want to be able to return to like Brébeuf or McGill or Concordia and have my
Yeah.
events there without having the government be like, but we know what you did last summer, you know.
Yeah.
No, I didn't do anything.
Yeah, right now the Canadian scene when it comes to like amateur stuff's really weird because I think in like Ontario, amateur MMA isn't legal, but then there's that loophole where there's ties legal, but grappling's legal, and then sport MMA is kind of legal. It's really weird. So I forgot about the Quebec scene because I stopped fighting in Quebec because they made it illegal, and then I had to start going to the States, and then once I went pro. But I think it only hurts the amateurs because think about like if you're an amateur with 3 fights and then you can't fight amateur anymore in your province, but there's pro, then you go pro, you can get hurt that way, right? So
Absolutely. And
um,
like touch on what you just said, like Ontario is amateur illegal MMA, and pro shows have almost completely disappeared from Ontario as well. You would think that Toronto would be the place to have like try to replicate those old school TKO UCC events.
yeah,
Like you would think that they could fill like the Rogers Arena or whatever it's called in Toronto and be able to be really successful with it. And even grappling, we were the last tournament in Toronto to be able to run unsanctioned. And then we started having the police show up and stuff, and just to overlook our events. And then at that point, we were like, "Oh, I don't really want to do this. If every time the police are going to show up just to overlook, but one day they might just randomly shut us down. I don't really want to run my tournament like that. I want to do it right, like I said before."
mm-hmm.
So now, like they came out with these provincial sporting organizations to overlook grappling. So we have our Toronto show this upcoming Saturday at Ryerson University. It's basically an annual event. We're only allowed once a year. The organization only allows each of us to produce one tournament a year.
Yeah,
So basically, every January, I'm going to have my Toronto tournament, which is like the Canadian championship for us. It sold out 10 days ago. So, I mean, which is pretty rare for jiu-jitsu tournament as well to
mm-hmm.
actually sell out. But we only have one day booked, and I was expecting it not to sell out, but I guess it did. Um, and basically that's it, like each tournament you have to go through an organization now, which is sanctioned by the Ontario Government of Tourism and the Tourism Ministry.
Yeah, yeah.
And basically, they'll give you the insurance, they'll hire your referees, they'll take a lot of the things that producers or
Hmm.
tournament promoters were doing before, and they'll do it for you. I think it kind of takes away part of the fun. Have to work with someone that you don't usually work with. I mean, here I am running tournaments in Manhattan, in London, UK, in Melbourne, Australia. But when I stay in my country and I go 5 hours to the west, I need to be sanctioned, and I need someone to hire the referees for me because they don't trust me to hire my own referees. Or,
Yeah.
I mean, it is what it is. Um, I'm just happy I get to have a tournament in Toronto, I guess, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah. The yeah, that Ontario tourism group is an interesting group. I've had to deal with them quite a bit with professional MMA, and there's only like really there's two shows that are pro in Ontario right now, and I know both of them struggle. Like one of them came to Ottawa this past summer, and they
Yeah.
you know they lost a lot of money, which is unfortunate. Because you want to see them be successful.
Yeah, in Ontario, it's the Ministry of Tourism, and in Quebec, it's the Commission de Alcohol and Gambling and Lottery.
Oh,
So,
that's yeah.
so it's kind of weird that the same people in Quebec that are managing our lottery and gambling and alcohol are the same ones managing boxing now, MMA, Thai boxing, and even grappling, even though grappling is not legal, to be honest.
Yeah. Do you think that'll change soon, or do you think it's still a while away to be fixed?
Man, it's been like 2 or 3 years, right?
Yeah.
Um, and like at first I was really into it. Like at first I really wanted to put money in a pot with a bunch of other promoters and then hire lawyers with that money. Um, but it just never came together. And I think like I don't know, to be honest. Like I don't want to do it by myself because I don't have enough to gain from it. I,
Hmm.
I consider doing it as like a service to my province to try to get it back. But even then, like I think I discussed this like a couple of weeks ago at a when I had a bunch of friends over, or a bunch of jiu-jitsu friends come over to my house for like a dinner I made them. I do that type of stuff. I like to host people for dinner. It gets like my ideas flowing when they give up and we discussed that maybe the best way to overturn those laws in Quebec would actually be one of us get arrested. Because once you're arrested, then you get to go to court. And once you go to court, then you get to appeal it. And then by appealing it, you get to appeal the entire law. Um, it's interesting because I've spoken to the senator who wrote that law originally, and he doesn't see it the same way as the province sees it. Um, so it'd be interesting if one of us did get arrested, if the senator would show up and the lawyers. But then, again, it would cost money, and I'm in the position with all these tournaments around the world that I can't really get arrested because um, so many countries have like border laws
Yeah.
that, like, for
Yeah.
example, the United States is a pretty great example that, like, once you get arrested for anything, going to the United States from another country becomes incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
Already I can tell you getting the type of visa I need to do business or actually go to the States physically every single week across their border was complicated and expensive in the first place.
Hmm.
So getting arrested, I would imagine it would be just so much more complex.
Yeah. It doesn't sound like a great idea, just to be
No,
honest. But like, it's sad that like that's the like
but
really
if
that's
you
what you
won
have.
the appeal,
Yeah. Yeah.
if you won the appeal, then you would not be arrested anymore on your record. You wouldn't have a criminal record, and you would get to have appealed the whole law, right?
Yeah.
So, but then again, who's willing to do that, right? I mean,
Jump is the saying like who's willing to jump on the grenade, I guess, or
yeah,
yeah. Well, awesome. That I learned a lot just about like the grappling scene today. Like I didn't realize like how much work you put into a show, and it's really fascinating. So you got the World Championships coming up. After that, what's next for Grappling Industries? What's next for you? Do you have a plan, or is it just like let's make it through this one first, and then we'll think about what's next?
no, we have plans.
Yeah,
Um, like we're always coming up with plans. I'm just again like once my team throws an idea out and it's good enough, we're like, oh man, let's do
you're
that.
running with it. Yeah,
Yeah, so we have like the Arnold's in March, which is like the biggest fitness expo in the United States or North
yeah,
America or maybe this side of the world actually. That's the event where every year Arnold Schwarzenegger drops in and walks around our mats with his shoes on, which is
yeah.
a joke of ours. It's like someone tell Arnold to take his fucking shoes off. Um,
Yeah.
you know, and that's a massive event, to be honest. We have Gordon Ryan, who's the biggest name in no-gi jiu-jitsu. He's competing in the tournament. It might be the last tournament he ever competes in because he was announcing that he wants to retire from jiu-jitsu even though he's 24.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if he is, but he's competing in the tournament. He's giving a seminar on the Sunday. I think there's going to be 1,000 competitors at that tournament, so that's pretty amazing. And again, the expo is unbelievable. Seriously, like every major company in fitness or supplements or powerlifting is going to be at that expo.
Hmm.
Then we have the start of the Europa Game Expos, the one in Orlando, the one in Phoenix. Then we have the one in Dallas, which is our World Championship. We also have Craig Jones giving a seminar that weekend at our World Championship. He's one of the biggest names in Jiu-Jitsu as well now, from down under.
Hmm.
Um, and then like an idea that we haven't announced, but I guess I'll talk to you with it now about it with it now. Um, we're working on a Euros edition as well. Like clearly, you can't just have a World Championship and not start titling other events. You need to create nationals. You need to create uh, American Championship, USA Championship,
Hmm.
Oceania Championship. And one thing we're working on is that European Championship, the Euros. The IBJJF does this every year in Lisbon, Portugal. I went like 10 years ago.
Hmm.
Great time, one of the biggest tournaments the IBJJF has. Um, we're planning to do something similar to the Worlds, if you know what I mean,
Hmm.
but in Europe. We're planning it in Warsaw, Poland, which is like I don't think the North American Jiu-Jitsu crowd understands, but Poland is massive in
Hmm.
jiu-jitsu. More black belts exist in Poland than any other country in Europe. It's that big. So we're planning to do like a 2 or 3 day event in Poland and hopefully kind of like the world to make it free. The only
Hmm.
thing we haven't figured out about it yet is we only have one production in Europe. So how do we get that? The 10 rings up to like 20, 25 rings.
Yeah.
How do we get the staff for this? We're not sure yet, but we're planning to do something like that for like the third quarter, fourth quarter of the year. Sorry, probably the fourth quarter of the year. So that's our way of really infiltrating, like really attacking Europe, especially Eastern Europe, because we've
Hmm.
kind of stayed out of Eastern Europe because we want to have this big event in Warsaw before we start going to Warsaw with paid events where people
Yeah.
have to pay us. And then like towards the end of the year, that's when we're gonna start to announce like our year-end big shows, our year-end big super fights, big seminars, next year's sponsors. And by the end of like the fourth quarter is when you typically hear about us like adding like 10 or 15 new cities to the next year.
Hmm.
Um, Basically, like when I got these employees and I named them directors, they were great at booking venues and they were great at booking staffs. But they would always come back to me and they would always ask me, "Oh, can we do this date in this city? Is that all right with you?" And I would say, "Okay." And at one point, I was just like, "You know what? Do whatever you want, man.
Hmm.
I kind of trust you. You work for me. I trust you." And
Yeah.
then at that point, it's like I don't even know about stuff anymore. I mean,
Yeah.
it kind of like we have a design group with our designer and then dates are just being dropped in there left and right around the world. I remember like I was in Africa and I got Wi-Fi one day and I saw they announced like they were asking the designer for Copenhagen in Denmark and they were asking from Vienna, Austria. And then next thing you know, we're like doing this and we're doing that. Like it's I think what I'm saying is that like at the beginning, a lot of entrepreneurs, especially myself, you wanted to have your hand in everything. But if you really, really want to go as far as like kind of like Grappling Industries has,
Hmm.
you really have to trust the people you work with and know
Yeah.
that they're on your team. They're not going to do this just for brags and giggles, but they're
Hmm.
going to do it because they believe in it as well. And once you're all on that same page and everyone has their role classified, I think that's when, and especially now, that's when the magic is really beginning to occur.
Awesome. Well, that was amazing. Thank you so much for taking your time out of your
Well,
day
thank
and
you, man.
talking with me. And just thank you again for everything you've done for me in my jiu-jitsu journey.
It's
I'm
no
still
problem.
going strong. Yeah. So thank you. Is there anything you want to add before we close up?
Oh man, visit www.grapplingindustries.com. Hit the
Awesome.
events page. It doesn't matter where you live in this world. There's definitely a Grappling Industries in a city near you.
Yeah.
Especially if you talk English. The English part of the world has been attacked by Grappling Industries.
Yeah.
It's the concept of painting the map orange.
I love it. I love it. And I just love how, like, it started off in this little gym and you've built it to be something incredible just by the motto of just doing a round robin and wanting to do something different. So it's amazing.
Still makes me laugh.
Yeah. Thank you very much. You have yourself a great day.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you, and have a good day as well.
You too.